Hello, and welcome from me, Jenny Devitt, to some more summer sunshine from the BV podcast for July 2025, and a taste of just some of the terrific things to be found in this lovely county of ours, Dorset. So what's on the menu this month? Well, fish for one, and the delicious sounding trout bred by farmer Justin Frampton and his team at Houghton Springs Trout Farm. And if you have a liking for country walks, then why not take yourself off to Sturton Cornwall and enjoy the Stiles Trail, 9 of them, round that Dorset village, a project dreamt up by local resident and map maker Catherine Speakman. The Dorset Insider this month is about rural rescue, looking after our neighbours in rural parts, why we should try not to overburden the NHS emergency services, and if we should maybe learn how that village defibrillator works. And finally, Dorset Councillor for Sturminster Newton Carol Jones tells me about that jewel in Sturminster's crown, the Vale Family Hub. As ever, though, we start our podcast by hearing from our editor, YouLaura Hitchcock.
Is it just me, or has time developed an alarming habit of folding itself in half when you're not looking? All week, every conversation seems to have started the same way. How is it July already? Followed by a sort of dazed blinking and a check of the calendar to make sure we haven't skipped a month. I swear it was March about 10 minutes ago. The hedges were barely greening up, I was still hunting for my winter gloves, and now here we are, school holidays upon us. The garden's trying to become a jungle, and the entire county is heading off to shows and fetes and barbecues. Maybe it's the long daylight that does it. Everything feels compressed and stretched at the same time. Days last forever, but weeks vanish without a trace. The to-do list never seems to get shorter, but somehow we've already had the longest day and you're wondering where you were when the first half of the year disappeared. If you're feeling the same slight panic that you haven't made enough plans or achieved quite enough or generally kept up, please know you're not alone. I think sometimes just lifting our heads and smiling at the sunshine counts as a win. So here's to July. However it managed to sneak up on us, I hope it's been full of small, ordinary pleasures and at least the occasional day that hasn't vanished while you were trying to remember where you put the corncob forks.
I wonder if you're a trout fancier. Fancy eating trout, I mean, or fishing for them. Farmer Justin Frampton certainly loves trout, as witness the fact he bought the Houghton Springs Trout Farm in Winterborne, Houghton, not so very long ago. The farm is becoming increasingly well known for the quality and size of its fish. It was started by a Dutch engineer, Hans Hoff, who made it his mission to breed better and better quality trout. Justin Frampton has known the farm all his life.
The farm has been here since the late 60s. It started off as a cress beds, and then it changed in about 1968-69 to a fish farm.
So I kind of assume that if it was watercress beds, I mean, watercress really needs to be grown in very clean water, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, yeah. I mean, the water that we pump from the aquifer is as clean as you'll ever get. It's very clean.
And you said where the trout farm is sort of sits in a little valley, does it?
Yeah, so the Winterborne Houghton Valley is nearly a dead end valley when you come up from Stickland. And the fish farm sits in the bottom of the valley, and then there's a valley head where the water's all caught and goes into the aquifer. And there is a Winterborne stream that runs, which dries up in the summer, and we pump from boreholes.
So if you're pumping from boreholes, then I assume, Justin, that the water is very pure. It's not got nitrates or anything in it, has it?
It's got nothing at all in it. No, it's extremely clean because there's very little farming goes on up the valley now. There's no dairy farms. There's not much corn grown, so the water comes from about 110 to 120 feet below, down in the ground. We've got 16 boreholes, and the water is clean.
I must say that's a real blessing, isn't it? Because so many places, the water is not as pure as one might like it to be.
No, it's not. We're the only compartmental farm in the whole country, so that means we haven't got a river above or below us, so that the risk of disease or fish coming into us or anything else is pretty much zero.
So no contamination from other fish species in the vicinity. That's a real boon, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Makes a huge difference. I mean, we supplied a load of fish to a chap on Exmoor a couple of weeks ago, and sadly they've got a lot of disease on their farm because it's in the water that comes down the river. They struggle with the disease in this hot weather. They've had big problems.
The hot weather presumably causes all sorts of problems with disease and I guess water pollution too.
Disease, water pollution, and algae and weed problems in the hot weather really grows. But again, we're quite lucky because we don't suffer too badly with that.
That's a blessing, isn't it? So Justin, what is special about your trout farm?
So the trout have been a lifelong passion of Hans Hoff, who I bought the farm off. He sadly passed away 18 months ago. He basically over 40 years has genetically selected sort of almost perfect trout. So it grows very quickly. It converts food to weight extremely well. And also the meat and the flesh of the fish is more like a wild fish. So it's got a little bit more fat content to it than a traditionally farmed trout. And the strain, the Winterborne, is a lifelong of Hans's.
So, or maybe Justin, when you talk about wild trout, the way wild trout used to be.
Yes, true. Sorry, yeah. I mean, obviously the wild trout and wild salmon are on the decline. So we stock some of these in the local lakes for fishermen, and they report that they put up a good fight, and they're very good sporting fish.
So what? They're released into a trout stream or something then for the fishermen to catch
Into lakes,
into lakes.
into lakes. Yeah, so we stock them for like the Winterborne Fishing Club and the Christchurch Fishing Club have fishing lakes.
And presumably they follow the practice of catch and release.
Some of them, yeah, some of them catch and take and eat them, take them away.
So if they're really nice and grown in very clean waters and nice and meaty, I presume these are very tasty trout.
They're extremely tasty, yes, yeah. So 80% of our fish are for the table, so for eating. A lot go to London, a lot go to high-end restaurants, and they're particularly sought after for the sashimi and sushi market.
Justin, you referred to Dutch, the engineer from whom, Hans Hoff, from whom you bought the farm, having genetically selected the trout. That is not the same as genetically modified then.
Completely not, no, completely opposite. So basically, each year he would have a test batch of trout, so male and female ones, get the baby, the fry, the eggs to fry, and then grow them on. And then, say, if a certain one had a problem with the didn't grow as well or didn't grow as fast, then he would split them out and then breed from the ones that did. And over time, it took a long time through taking samples, watching them grow. It was a long, long period of time.
So in other words, I mean that's just like a traditional selection of any livestock, isn't it?
Exactly, yes, yeah. I'm from farming background myself, and that's why the fish farm appealed to me. That it's the same as I used to be a shepherd. It's the same as looking after sheep. They just happen to be in water. So, yeah, you're right. You're right. That you genetically select your best sheep or cows or whatever and breed on from there. So we're lucky we've got this strain, this Winterborne strain.
So Justin, a wee bit different from farming from farming sheep because you've got them all contained in a much smaller area and presumably they're much cleaner.
Oh, much cleaner. Yes, yeah, yeah. It's just very different in looking after them in water. You still got to move them, feed them, clean them out. They do jump out from time to time. They jump out the ponds. So yeah, it is just a bit different.
Now, you mentioned the farm on Exmoor, and it must be like lots of other trout farms up and down the country suffering from, not having the quality of water that you have and having diseases. I always think of farmed fish as being full of chemicals and antibiotics. Would I be right in assuming you don't need to use any of those?
No, we don't. No, we don't use any antibiotics in any of our fish or any drugs. They do get a one-time drench when they're very young, which is to stop a thing called white spot, which is just a genetic thing in all fish. It's a very low dosage. But other farms would have to inject and inoculate for a lot more diseases but luckily we don't have to deal with.
So you're really producing very high end and very good quality of fish, aren't you? And I imagine that discerning customers would be very happy to know exactly where their trout comes from.
Hans was amazing at breeding the fish, growing the fish, and doing everything else, but he wasn't that interested. He wasn't that good at selling them. So that's where I come in. I own a couple of shops in Blanford, and I just think, what attracted me to the farm is that it needs to be recognised. People need to know it's here, need to know the quality of the fish, and even with it, in 5 weeks of me owning it, we picked up a lot more restaurants and pubs and local people just coming to buy it. So we had a load of hot smoke back yesterday. Lunchtime, we had over 10 kilos of hot smoke, and by 8 o'clock last night, it was all gone. It was all sold.
So are you trying to expand and concentrate on your local market?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So, as I say, most of the fish go to London or to other restaurants all around the country, but I want to see it on menus in Dorset. I think it's such a Dorset quality product. It should be on the menu, next to Dorset lamb and Dorset beef.
Because Dorset has some wonderful food producers, doesn't it?
It does, and there's hardly any trout farms in Dorset. I think there's four. One of them's two of them are quite small. We also produce a lot because we've got the breeding stock here, so we produce the whole fish, from egg right the way through. But we also sell a lot of eggs to other farms and fry to other farms.
Tell me, which is the area of production that you most enjoy?
I've only been involved in the sort of finishing of the fish at the moment because when they strip the eggs and do that processes November, December time, so I wasn't really involved then. But it's interesting just grading the fish and seeing the fish grow. And we've got some big fish here. We've got some sort of 3-4 kilos fish. They're massive and they're so beautiful. And it's just the quality, just seeing them swimming around in the pure clear water. Had a few visitors, and a lot of comments have been, "Blimey, you can see the fish." A lot of fish farms you go to, the water's so muddy or it's got sediment in it that you can't actually see the fish. But ours, you can see them, because the water's so clear. It's very exciting to be able to offer such an amazing product.
Well, that's just lovely to hear. I mean, I always thought, Justin, that trout needed fast-flowing water.
No. We are, constant. This time of year, we're pumping water, so the water is constantly moving. It doesn't need to move at very fast as long as it's constant for the oxygen. So we do also pump in liquid oxygen this time of year because obviously with the heat, the oxygen levels are quite low.
Is the heat a particular challenge for you? I mean, we have had, we're all aware that we're going through a rather exceptional time of high temperatures. Is this a problem for the fish?
Not necessarily. No, actually, the warmer the water, the faster they grow. They will put on weight. The faster, the warmer the water is, they do grow a bit better. The biggest challenge is just the oxygen levels. But as I said, we've got 16 boreholes on site, so we can pump more water where we need it. And the water coming out of the ground is a constant 10 to 11 degrees. That never changes, even in this hot weather, because it's coming from so deep in the ground. So that fresh water is constantly fresh, and we keep it flowing.
Do you have to provide shade for the fish?
No, they don't mind the sun at all. They actually quite like it, swimming around in the bright sunshine. So they used to do a thing called Arctic char on the farm, and they, by their name Arctic, they really did. They would have hated this weather. They didn't like the hot weather at all.
Just as well you haven't got those anymore then, isn't it?
Yeah, which is one of the main factors that they stopped doing them. Yeah.
I gather, Justin, that very unsurprisingly, electricity is your biggest cost, but you're looking at floating solar panels. Something tried in Australia?
Yeah, so my uncle farms in Australia, traditional farming. They have floating solar on a lot of their reservoirs for pumping water. So I started looking at it in this country, and it's very it's not really done in this country. Although a couple of weeks ago the government did announce that they are looking at schemes to float solar on reservoirs, which is quite interesting. So yeah, we're looking at some of the ponds to cover. The fish could still swim around underneath, and actually the shade might help with evaporation of water, so it might save us some water in the long run. And also, the water will keep the panels cooler, so they should be more efficient, which is quite interesting.
Very much a win-win situation. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. You just mentioned that the government's looking into putting them on reservoirs. What a sensible idea. Stop the evaporation and provide electricity.
Exactly, yeah. Definitely a win-win. And yes, electric is beyond food is our major cost because we're pumping. So a lot of the fish farms that are on rivers obviously don't need to pump very much water because it's constantly flowing. But then that comes with its own problems.
Yes, they may have one advantage over you, but several other disadvantages.
Yes, and more disadvantages than advantages.
Now, I gather, Justin, that you've got some plans to set up really what amounts to a good little local good food hub with other local food producers.
Yeah, there's some very good food producers in Houghton. It's only a small village, but there are some very good producers here. We got Rosie Cider just up the road, who makes amazing cider and apple juice. We got South Paddocks just up the hill, who produce amazing pork products, so pork pies, sausage rolls, and they do a lot of shows with their pork. They sell their produce at shows around the country. And we got Michaela, who's got her own bees, and produces some beautiful honey. So there's some nice products here, and obviously with our fish in different forms. I think it'd be nice to have a little bit of a hub and show what we produce.
They just need some local premises.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So which hopefully we can supply that. It'd only be on a small scale. I'm looking at maybe one of these electronic vending machines, a chilled vending machine. I think might be the answer to start with, and then see how it goes really. Because we sell quite a lot of fish from the farm gate, so people come to the farm.
And these are not fish that are still swimming around, I assume.
No, we so we make them so they're ready for the table.
Right. So all you need to do is take them home, gut them, and fillet them, and
No, they're already gutted, so we gut them.
but you don't fillet them.
Uh,
So, no,
we don't
so you
fillet
have
them,
to do
no.
that yourself. I mean, and all you need.
But most people take them whole. They cook them whole because they're 400 to 500 gram fish, so they're portion size. We do sell big fish if people want them.
Well, sound delicious. So it strikes me that in this local food hub that you're going to create, all you need is somebody producing the vegetables and the fruit, and then you can offer absolutely everything.
Yes, a whole meal. Yes, yes. So I have to get the garden going.
Yes, you will. That'll be your next enterprise. I'm wondering finally, Justin, if you might be seeing an increase in sales following the very disturbing facts about ocean fishing that was seen in David Attenborough's recent ocean film. I mean, the footage of bottom trawling and the huge factory ships off Antarctica has frankly put me off wanting to eat oceanic fish. So if I can find a source of nice, clean fish such as yours, I'd be delighted.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and we're getting asked. There's definitely a growing market for our fish to replace salmon because of the bad press about salmon and the amount of drugs and things they need to use to keep the salmon farms going in Scotland or and wherever. But so we're getting asked a lot more for big fish to replace salmon in restaurants and pubs and things. So that's what we're looking to produce more of, the bigger fish to replace salmon on the menus.
And of course, you presumably are not having to feed your fish on fish caught from some distant part of the ocean.
No, exactly. No, no.
What do you feed your fish on?
The fish actually comes from France, which is the only disappointing part at the moment, to be fair, that we can't find it locally because of what's in it. There's not much made in this country because fish farming is such a small minority that it's not a big enough market for them.
So they're being fed on. You said carp. They're fed on. Did
No,
you
not
say
carp. No, just on trout pellet. It comes from France.
on pellets made from what?
They're made from other fish. but most of them come from Europe. They're not from the Antarctic, so they would come from other fish farms.
Okay, so it's a sort of circular thing then.
So a circular thing, exactly. Yeah.
So these are fish farmed on land?
On land, yeah, mostly on land. Some would be from. No, I think they're mostly on land.
So, yes. Oh, well, that all sounds absolutely wonderful. I can see that I shall have to wend my way to Winterborne, Houghton, and come and buy some fish.
We will be later in the summer once I've had a chance to get my head around things. We'll probably have a couple of open days just to show people around because it's very interesting how we do the whole process. From egg to table.
Well, be sure to let us know, won't you, on the BV when you're going to be doing that.
I will, yes, no, we definitely will do. Yeah, no, we will do.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Justin. I'll let you get back out, presumably wearing your sun hat.
Yes, sun hat and sun cream. Yeah.
Yes. Do you ever feel tempted to dabble your feet in the water?
Lovely being by the water or in. Yes, yeah, and actually one of my staff actually fell in this morning.
But didn't complain.
She said it is so nice. No, she didn't jump out too quickly because it was so nice.
Finally, before I leave you, I remember once upon a time, quite a long time ago, down in the Cevennes in southern France, having a go at tickling trout. Just in a little upland stream, and there was this trout underneath, in the shade of it was a hot day, in the shade of a rock. And I found that, by caressing its belly very gently, sort of mesmerized it. But as soon as I tried closing my hand around it, it went back to its former position. But it was fascinating. I really, I could see that given plenty of patience and not minding your hand freezing, it works.
Yes, yeah, maybe that's another selling point. People can come and have a go. Ours don't sit still that long.
Come and have a go at tickling trout.
That's it.
An ancient poaching technique.
That's it.
Thanks so much, Justin. It's been a pleasure to
Shane,
talk
nice
to you.
to talk to you.
Yes, go and enjoy that nice cool water.
Will do. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Justin Frampton of Houghton Springs Trout Farm in Winterborne, Houghton. And I must say that those trout sound well worth travelling to buy. How many times do we just step over a stile when we're on a country walk and not even notice it unless it's broken or in a dodgy state? When one of her neighbours repaired a broken stile in Sturton, Cornwall, local resident Catherine Speakman got the idea for an enterprising and unusual village project, the Sturton Cornwall Stile Trail. She filled me in on the background to the project.
Well, it was a kind of a combination of things that came together at the right time, really. I myself run a website called Tess of the Vale, and the mission of that is to try and entice people to forgotten corners of the county. Everyone's familiar with Durdle Door, everyone's familiar with Maiden Castle, but there are hundreds of places all over the county that just don't have enough attention, I think, and they do deserve it. And that kind of combined with a neighbour of mine who just recently replaced a stile that was in a sorry state. And the wood it was beautifully made. And I just saw it as a blank canvas. And I thought it would be fun to kind of decorate and make into some kind of mission for people. Oh, I want to go see that stile, the odd stile in the countryside. And I just wanted to get a couple of friends of mine from the village to kind of go round one afternoon with a pot of paint and a couple of beers and just have a fun afternoon tarting up these stiles. But I thought it was a bit selfish to keep them to ourselves, so I offered them to the wider community, and that's where it kind of took off, really. And so I developed this loop around the village that had 9 stiles on it, and then it became the mission to try and find 9 groups, organisations, artists, people who were just up for it to come and have a stile, and then it snowballed.
Wonderful. So the stiles encircle the village, do they?
They do. I mean, it's a linear village, so it kind of follows the road through the village, and this particular route kind of sticks to the southern end. You never know, we might develop it to extend if it becomes a real success, or there's a need for it. But yeah, we were obviously restricted. We had to stick to the footpaths. I wanted to try and incorporate as many stiles as possible. I didn't want to make it too long, so a natural route kind of developed that leads from the pub straight out into the countryside and up into the hills where you have nice views down on the village, and then it enters back into the village, and then it circles around the older part of the village, if you like. So that also enables it to be cut in two if required. So the whole length of it is just under 2 miles or 3 kilometres. But if you use the Valley Road, which is marked on the route map, you can use that as a shortcut. So it can divide into about a mile and about a just under mile route. And there's also a all accessible trail as well, so that it doesn't isolate anyone, it doesn't discriminate against anyone, and anyone can come and enjoy it. That just uses a hard track through the farm.
So it's not too challenging a walk then?
Not at all. On the open day, it was really good to hear the feedback of people. And some already had come with the idea that they weren't going to do it all. They were just going to see what they could do. But in the end, they actually ended up doing them all and visiting all the stiles because it wasn't as difficult or as much effort as they assumed. The only big, real tough bit is the gentle climb out the village after stile 1 and coming back down the hill to stile 2. But other than that, there's very little climbs. It keeps to the valley. It follows kind of the river, and they're all kind of short distances between the stiles. So there's always something to look forward to that comes quite quick. So the distance and the effort really isn't noticed, I don't think, by those doing the trail.
And you've put QR codes on the stiles.
Yes, I have. On each stile, there is a little badge, if you like, marking that it's the stile number and that it's part of the Sturton Corndall Stile Trail. And then it identifies who made that stile. For example, on stile 1, we have Dean Martin Creations, and he's a stonemason. And he engraved some beautiful marnel stone with the entrance to the stile trail. So he's got his own badge with a little QR code that links to his Instagram. And then the actual stile itself was built by JST Building Services. So he also has his own little QR code and an orange badge on the stile as well. So people going by, they can just show the QR code on their phone, and they can pull up the information about those who actually made the stile themselves.
Now, are these stiles all made of traditional materials?
They are varied. I mean, one thing I kind of hoped to do was to make each stile different so that it kind of entices, people of all interests. So, like I said, stile 1 is made out of the local marnel stone. Stile 2 is made out of wood, but it's actually All Saints School in Bishop's Corndall that did that one. So they have focused on a mindful style and a well-being. So what they've done is they've got some bird boxes and filled the bird boxes with painted stones with little kind of sayings on them, or thoughts or contemplations, if you like. So people can come to the stile and pick a pebble out if they want and just have a little think about what it says on that pebble. Then if we skip forward to stile 5, we've got metal, because it's Dorset Forge and Fabrication, and there's some amazing sculptures that use a lot of recycled material or metal. And then stile 6 is wood, that's by Conygar Timber. And then the following stile is Castle Gardens, so that's a natural style focusing on plants and organic material, if you like. So we have a range of materials, but they are very kind of locally focused. I didn't want to go too far out of our realms, if you like, because I wanted to kind of show off the local area as much as possible.
And this, Catherine, this was a no-budget project. So you were relying on individual goodwill and voluntary effort.
Yes, that's right. I mean, that's what I found hardest to do, actually, was asking people to do this work, because it is work, and they're using their materials for free. So I really kind of appealed to the creative nature. I wanted them to see this as fun, as a way to show off their skills, because so frequently they are asked to produce something for someone else, to please someone else. And I thought, well, if I can try and pull on their strings in a way to say, you can do whatever you want to do with it, then that may attract them, and they'll see it as a challenge. And also they can use what skills, time and finances they have available, rather than making them do a specific thing. Some of the styles were in worse states than others, so they were able to kind of pick which ones suited them best for their own constraints, time and financial constraints. So like forge and fabrication, all they needed to do was just kind of decorate the style. But Conygar Timber completely rebuilt it. So 5, as did Marnell Stone. So some are completely rebuilt and some are just kind of decorated, again, depending on what each individual wanted to do.
I'm wondering, Catherine, to whom do these styles belong?
Well, I like to think styles belong to everybody. No one has ownership over styles. Obviously, it falls to landowners and the council to maintain. But I also kind of thought that if it would be almost like the participants are adopting them. There's no mandatory way that they have to look after them. The responsibility still falls to landowners and the council. But I hope that the people who've built them take pride in them and want to maintain them, because it is reflecting their own business. I see the Style Trail as a long-term project, and I hope they do too. If as a plan B, if they're unable to maintain them, or they don't have the time anymore, and it gets to a stage where the style does need more attention, maybe we could find someone else who would freshly adopt it. I'd like to think that this is a project that will grow with time and still keep footpaths open, which is one of the other missions of the Style Trail, if you like, is make sure that these footpaths are accessible and usable and available to everybody.
I imagine it's going to encourage more people out onto the footpaths.
Yes, exactly. It brings me back to the point that, there's so many places in Dorset that aren't visited. I think the good old, as I heard it called, the Dorset Smile, which is the Jurassic Coast, the big bottom grin of the county, is so popular. And yet North Dorset, we're struggling. Pubs are closing. Businesses aren't getting the footfall that you experience down on the south coast. And I just see this as another way to entice visitors or locals to areas that they wouldn't necessarily go. You may live in one village, but a village two valleys down or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily go to unless you know someone who lives there. So this is just a way to say, come and see this village. Come and have a drink in the pub, or go to the art gallery that's round the corner, or go see the cheesemakers that's up the road at the farm. There's so many other different attractions in the county that would welcome footfall, and I just hope that this is another way that encourages that behaviour.
And also, I suppose, people will become much more aware of their local environment and wanting to care for it.
Exactly. Sturton Corndall, as are so many villages, is rich with its local history. I mean, you mentioned Enid Blyton, who was the owner of our manor farm for a period of time. We also used to have a castle, which was quite similar in appearance, apparently, to Wardour Castle, so nothing modest. Now that we've lost the castle, but we still have the plateau in the field where it once sat. We still have the medieval chapel, and we still have the medieval fish ponds. We also have connections to Dick Whittington and his cat, and our road is named Cat Lane, thanks to the presence of the cats in the village during the plague. So there's all this history that is incorporated within the walk as well. And when people understand the landscape, it helps them to understand the need for conservation. And I think this is crucial. I think we're in an important part in our lives and in the countryside's life. I think that it's important that we recognise those areas that don't necessarily, their history isn't necessarily known, and without that knowledge there's a risk that it won't be quite as protected as other areas that are well known. So it's just making people aware of history and the need to look after it.
And you mentioned landscape a moment ago, and you are a map maker.
I am. I'm actually. I studied a master's in landscape archaeology at Exeter University, and then I went on to work for the Admiralty, part of the MOD, where my role was updating Admiralty charts of the world. So it was quite an exciting job, but it was a job that had a lot of responsibility. You had to be precise, you had to be exact, and it was crucial that you were accurate. And on leaving that job, because I had children that required extra responsibility and time, I decided to carry on the joy of making the maps, but by recording walks and places in Dorset. And that's what led to the Test of the Vale website, really. So I draw a map of the area that I'm walking around, then I research it, and then I record what I found within that map and within the walk. And it's shocking how much I find, actually. On just a 3-mile walk that would take an hour, you time travel from prehistory right through to modern day, and there's evidence for it everywhere in the landscape.
How absolutely fascinating and rewarding. And I'm also thinking that if your 9 Stiles round Sturton Corndle project was successful, you may perhaps be getting interest from other areas close by?
I would really hope so. I'm kind of just watching my email box, hoping that someone does get in touch that would like to continue this project elsewhere. I think it's a win-win for everyone. I think it's a win for the businesses that take part. It's a win for the village that it takes part within. It's a win for the landscape because you're creating awareness of conservation and history and wildlife and nature. And it's a win for those who are actually taking part in it, the ones who walk it, because as we know, well-being and walking go hand in hand, as we are commonly told. But I think the benefits are still underestimated.
Yes, you're absolutely right there. Well, perhaps since some of the stiles are supposed to be maintained by the council, perhaps they'd like to get involved and extend the project elsewhere.
I'd happily help the council. They can email me or ring me. I will be here. Or any parish councils as well. Sometimes, the council have other priorities, and like we did at the Sturton Corndle, I got in touch with the council, I got in touch with the Ramblers as well to make sure that they all kind of agreed with the project, which they did. So I would help anybody if they wanted to carry it out somewhere else without a doubt.
And so if somebody somewhere else, another village, was interested and wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
You can either get in touch with me through the Test of the Vale website or contact me directly on testofthevale@gmail.com.
Right, okay. Catherine, thank you very much. I wish you well, and I shall have to come and walk your 9 Stiles.
Please do. I'd love to hear any feedback.
Catherine Speakman talking to me about the Sturton Corndle Stile Trail. And now, the Dorset Insider.
I got a call to help break into a neighbour's home this week. George was elderly, not in the best of health, and his daughter couldn't get in to check on him. Something was horribly wrong. One of the nice things about the village is that people materialise from nowhere in a crisis. Someone brought a ladder to get into an upstairs window. A young lad sprinted into the village to get a defibrillator. A mum waited to flag down the emergency services and keep a parking space clear. In rural communities, people come together to help each other. Whenever I've called 999, it's always been answered immediately, but this time I had to wait to be answered. I was told there would be a wait for a crew because the service was so busy. However, that's the state of the NHS and ambulance service today. Then I had to phone back because George deteriorated, and thankfully the call was upgraded. It still took a further 30 minutes, an hour in total, for an ambulance to respond to a Category A call, which is supposed to be 7 minutes. Naturally, it always feels longer when someone needs help urgently. The paramedics were calm, proficient and brilliant, and clearly rushing from call to call with barely a break. It's not their fault. The entire system needs a massive upgrade and investment, and being in a rural area doesn't help. And that got me thinking. How can we in rural communities help the situation? Once the defibrillator was back on charge, I reflected on the experience. What would make life easier and safer for the older and more vulnerable people living in our communities and help them stay independent? Starting with the obvious, would you know what to do if there was a medical emergency? Do you know where your local defibrillator is located and also how to use it? If not, find out. And look out for first aid training courses. Just moved into a new area? Now's the time to locate your nearest defibrillator before you get caught short. Most parishes have days when people can familiarise themselves with emergency equipment. If your parish hasn't got a defibrillator, it's time to get one. They save lives. And get it registered so that the emergency services can direct people to it. Waiting for an ambulance can take significantly longer these days, so you may need to think about keeping an injured person comfortable for several hours or getting help from others to relieve you. Learn some first aid. You never know when it might come in handy. While we don't want a neighbourhood watch-like system on steroids or to be seen as nosy neighbours, how often do we check on those older people around us, particularly those living alone? We struggled to think when we'd last seen George, possibly a day ago. Then we noticed his bin hadn't been taken out. A subtle clue signalling something was wrong, but seen a bit too late. In a heatwave or really cold weather, checking on elderly neighbours is important. And if a neighbour struggles to get their bin out, offering to help would probably be appreciated. It's a small way of supporting someone, but can make a big difference. Some local authorities have trackers in the bins of vulnerable people to help detect if they are struggling to use them, which can indicate they are unwell and in need of help. If there's an emergency in your home, would the paramedics be able to find it? Or do they have to guess at the numbering, the nebulous street signage, or hack their way through an overgrown hedge? Making sure your house has a clear number or name and can be accessed without causing another accident saves valuable time in an emergency, especially when ambulance crews are trying their best to get to you as fast as possible. This is particularly important in rural areas during winter where there is no street lighting. What 3 Words is an excellent app for locating an accident such as in a field, but it's just as useful for tricky nebulous rural addresses to help the emergency services find you. Then there's the living space. Watching the paramedics get George down a steep flight of stairs with piles of monitoring equipment was a sober lesson in why we should be building more adaptable and accessible accommodation and supporting those in inappropriate homes to relocate to something more suitable. And for every building developer saying no, they should be made to lower a stretcher with a 16-stone person down a narrow stairway. What a nightmare these places are in an emergency. And that's before we reflect on what a struggle it must have been for George to get up and down those stairs in the first place. Finally, only call 999 for an ambulance when you really need it. There are alternatives such as NHS 111 and a local pharmacy for minor problems. Paramedics are highly trained professionals. They are the salt of the earth or will bend over backwards to help in an emergency. However, they do not run a taxi service.
I'm willing to bet there's no one living in or around Sturminster Newton who hasn't heard of the truly excellent Vale Family Hub. It opened in March of this year, and it would be a mistake to think that it exists for those on benefit or for scroungers. It exists to help all sorts of people, families for the most part, who find themselves in financial and other difficulties. It's run by a very dedicated team of staff and volunteers, headed by Dorset councillor for Sturminster Newton, Carol Jones. She told me how the hub started life.
Back in 2020, we opened what was the Vale Pantry, and that was really because we recognised and saw a great deal of food deprivation, well, real food poverty whilst the pandemic was underway. And we felt that we were in a position that we could actually do something about that, and our startup funding came from our GP surgery. So we opened in a small shop in the middle of Sturminster. And, you know, we've always been extremely busy. We're very well known. We had families from all over North Dorset and a little way into Somerset as well, going through to Henstridge, Temple Combe and so on. And as we sort of operated, we started to realise the number of complex issues that lay behind food poverty. And we wanted to address those and actually really help people find mechanisms working alongside them where we could help them get back on their feet and to independence. So within our small shop area, we were limited in space, but we were able to sort of do things like we had recipe bags trying to get people to cook from scratch using fresh ingredients with a step-by-step guide. We worked alongside them in terms of, we managed to get a citizens advisor who was situated down at the town council offices. And there were certain things we could do in terms of mentoring and just putting people in touch with the right people that for help and so on. But we wanted to go so much further. So we decided to look for larger premises. And it was a bold move because we knew it would take a huge amount of money. And it took 18 months and I had to raise about £300,000 to turn a really damp and not very nice warehouse into a very warm and welcoming space for families. So our family hub has got a free little soft play area for toddlers. It's got a fabulous cafe, kitchen, and we've got meeting rooms. We've got sort of certain things like second-hand clothes and toys and things where families, if they're in need, they can just help themselves. And from there, we opened our doors in our new premises at the beginning of March. And every day it's just an absolute joy. The place is thriving. There are so many families that are coming in, and we run probably around 30 or so different programs and activities focused around families in the main. So we've got things like early help and support for parents. We do speech and language, toddler play groups, stay and play, breastfeeding support. What else do we do? Oh my gosh, we do so much with little children, it's just not true. A lot of craft activities, and every summer holiday and every school holiday we put on children's activities anyway. But in addition, we've got our citizens advisor working alongside us for 2 days a week. We cover things like domestic abuse support, SEND support, substance misuse, parental conflict, stopping smoking. I mean, there is just so much going on, but we've actually also managed to create some very unique programs, and one such program we call Mission of Mindset. And this is really aimed at individuals who are just really struggling to cope with everyday life. They might have anxiety, depression, they could well be on antidepressants. They'll find themselves breaking down or just not able to cope at all some days. That may manifest itself in shouting and arguing with the rest of the family members and just really being in a situation of chaos a lot of the time. And this particular programme works with each individual over a period of quite a few weeks, where they just look at what are the triggers, what actually happens to make you sort of go into a bit of a meltdown, and then along with coping mechanisms. And that has been absolutely transformational. And to give you an example, one young lady that has come through this programme, when she first came in, she would talk at about 100 miles an hour. It was just gobbledygook, you know, it's just blah, 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 blah. And now she's talking absolutely normally. And she actually turned around and said, you know, my head feels clear. I feel like I can think for the first time. I feel like I'm in control and I can do this. And it's also about sort of reinforcing that everybody deserves to live a life well and people are worth it. You know, they especially if we're dealing perhaps with parental situations where there could be some coercion or abuse in play. That's just so important for people to realise that they have their rights. They absolutely have their rights.
So you're offering an awful lot more than food, aren't you? I mean, this has come a long way since the Vale Pantry started 5 years ago.
It really has. I mean, we always said things pretty much just start with food, but that's just where our work starts. But a lot of those coming in now, I mean, some will come in because they need the affordable food elements, but others will come in because they want to access toddler groups. They want somewhere safe for their children to play while they can perhaps meet somebody and have a chat. Or we'll be running programs like with Live Well Dorset, where people can come in and just get their blood pressure monitored, a cholesterol check, and just see where they are in terms of their own health. We have lots and lots of drop-in work. So we have Mind that comes in, CAMS, Home Start. We work very closely with our GP surgery and their social prescribing team. So we've often got one of their social prescribers coming in. And we do door PIP, that's parental and infant relationships, access to wellbeing. We have wellbeing champions in every week. So there's something for everybody. And actually, if you don't want any of that, the coffee's amazing.
So Carol, what you have there in effect is a microcosm of everything that society offers, pretty much.
Do you know, absolutely. And we're really quite unique. We're very proud of what we've been able to bring about. Our challenge is making it sustainable in the longer term, because we've got lots of new overheads and salary costs, which are pretty scary. So at any one time I will be spending most days trying to write funding bids and, you know, looking to see how we can get another few thousand in here and there. It's expensive to do, but oh my goodness, I can't tell you, some of the things that go on are just extraordinary. I mean, for example, we've got a mum with 3 children and her husband committed suicide just under a year ago. And she was in an absolutely dreadful state. She had no access to money because that was dealt with through her partner. And we've worked with her really closely all the way through, from getting sort of the finances sorted, getting the children in with Mosaic for one-to-one counselling, working with her on a one-to-one basis. And now she is one of our key volunteers now, and she comes in with a smile on her face and she can cope. And that's just one little story, but there are many, many more. There's another mum that's come down to us with 2 children, and she was relocated to our area following a very violent relationship and moved down from the north of the county. And, you know, she's still trying to pick up her pieces and find a normal life. With a very difficult child who has high additional needs because of the violence that he has witnessed. And we've managed to get her into social groups, and we actually managed to find her a full-time job, which she started last month. There's lots of things we do. We always want to go over and above, and our motto is, there is no such word as no. It's how. How can we make this happen? How can we make that better for this family? And what do they need? And for so many people, what they really need is just to be listened to really listen and understand, and then to sort of be able to take them through. Sometimes it's a long journey getting to a better place in life, but no, a lot of them do get to, well, most people do get to a better place in life. If we certainly look at the food provision, since we opened back in 2020, we've managed to get well over 700 families back on their feet and not needing subsidised food any longer. And that was through all sorts of mechanisms. So, yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge, but we're up for it.
So although it's a challenge, and you and your team are run off your feet, I assume on pretty much 24/7, it sounds as if it's extremely rewarding.
It is. It is. I mean, there are days when you want to absolutely laugh at what goes. Do you know, I think we'd make a really good soap opera, actually. I mean, if you could see what goes on some days, it's absolutely fantastic. And we do. We just feel like it's, you know, it's worthwhile. A few weeks ago, a woman brought her father in to see us, and he is in his late 80s, and he'd lost his partner very recently, and he had no idea how to cook a meal. So he comes in every week and he has cookery lessons, and he's been learning to make sort of some simple dishes, but he's doing well. But he's also actually finding new friends and having a social place to come to once a week as well. So do you know, there are so many stories I could tell you. But the other area actually that's quite interesting is the amount of work we do with youngsters. Generally they tend to be sort of young teenagers that are not perhaps engaging in education. They are at risk of exclusion. They may well have high additional needs, ADHD or some mental health issues. Invariably they've had some bullying at school. And we get a number of those in. We work very closely with the high school where they will ask us to take in a young person and they'll work alongside us for a period of time. And that has been absolutely transformational. We've managed to get 2 youngsters back into full-time education in the last month. And it's just a case of sort of building up confidence and self-esteem and treating them like a little adult, really, where we give them responsibility and we expect them to behave and to, talk about what they're liking, what they're not liking, and understanding where their issues are.
So you're understanding them, but you're also giving them boundaries. I guess, Carol, it may come as a surprise to hear that those who come to the hub and rely on what it offers are not necessarily living on benefit.
No, many aren't. Well, it's difficult, really, because a lot of those we help are actually working, but we're in an area where wages are low and rents are high. There are very, very few homeowners. Most are renting. And a typical family that I was talking to fairly recently, they had an income of £1,600 a month, and their rent was just under 1,000. They had 3 children. I mean, that's really difficult to make ends meet. So a lot of them will actually be working. So they could well be being topped up with universal credit. Those that are not working tend to have a long-term health issue. Very common is fibromyalgia, and that seems to affect probably, from what we can see, more women than it does men. But this basically means that very often people find it difficult to get out of bed first thing in the morning. It takes them a while to get their mobility going. Sometimes they just can't do it at all. And that really means that it's impossible for them to hold down a full-time or even very often a part-time job. So there is quite a lot of long-term health conditions that we work with. We also have a small number of people that are in with us that are undergoing palliative care. So it's a real mix, to be absolutely honest. And then we get sometimes some older single gentlemen coming in just to have their lunch, because they can eat a decent hot meal with us at lunchtime for cheaper than they would make it for themselves at home, and they can come in and get company at the same time. So there's all sorts of things. I mean, we rely on the income from our cafe. That's a hugely important revenue stream for us, and it's something we really want to build on in order to help our sustainability. Our biggest cost is that of purchasing all the food we need for our pantry area. We spend between 150 and 160,000 a year on food. Unlike a food bank, we don't get what I would call the dump bins in supermarkets. We do go around and collect end of day at the end of each day, and we go to Blandford, Shaftesbury, Gillingham, etc. to collect Wincanton as well. But most of what we get, we have to pay for, and I think there is this misconception that all of our food is free. I wish it was, because that's our biggest challenge, is our food costs.
There's also the issue of hidden poverty, isn't there? I mean, I assume you get people coming in to the hub who, on outward appearance, you wouldn't necessarily think they were desperate, but because hidden poverty is just that, isn't it? It's hidden.
People are so often surprised because poverty is hidden behind closed doors. You don't necessarily see somebody as being poor. Perhaps somebody might even be on the larger side, and you think, oh, well, they must be fine because they're eating well. But actually, probably what they're eating is a pile of rubbish and ultra-processed ready meals, which are high in calories and low in nutrition. But of course, the thing with food poverty is that food is the flexible budget. When things are tough and you've got to really cut back because your car's broken down, that's if you're lucky enough to have a car, because 35% of the people we work with don't. If you've got a bill to pay, if your child has to have some school shoes or whatever, then food is the flexible budget.
Yes, because you've got to pay your electricity bill, you've got to pay your council tax. There are these costs that have to be met, and so as you say, yes, if you're going to economise on anything, it's cutting down on food and buying the cheap food, which isn't the stuff that's good for you or nutritious. You're not content with everything that you already have on your plates, so to speak. Carol, I gather you've got plans for expansion, a men's support group and a youth club.
Oh, do you know, we'd love to have a men's group coming in, because I think that there are a lot of perhaps even single dads, lonely chaps that would just like to come in and, you know, just chat over stuff that men chat over. That's something that would be great for us to try and put into place. But a youth, yes, what we've discovered is that, well, certainly after school, every day after school, we get a little stream of young teenagers coming in, and they normally come in and see Kim, our manager. Kim is a force of nature. There is nothing that woman can't do. She is amazing. And they come in because they love Kim and they think she's funny and she's helpful. And they all queue up to see her one by one and tell her what's gone on each day and so on. And by talking to these people, you know, there is nowhere for them to go of an evening.
Yes, because time was when there were youth clubs just about everywhere, and there aren't anymore, are there?
Them's the days. So the town council have been talking for some time about having a youth provision, and they're getting sort of close to it. But we've got, I mean, our hub can very easily be opened for a couple of evenings a week. Ideally, we'd like a couple of volunteers to help us in that process. But actually, we're talking to the town council to see whether there is perhaps a joint activity we can work together and provide somewhere for youngsters 4 evenings each week. And that would be absolutely ideal. We've got some equipment coming, so we've got pool tables and football tables and goodness knows what. So if we can work together, I do love a bit of collaboration, that could work. But failing everything, we will definitely open a couple of evenings a week, because there is nowhere for these youngsters to go to. And very often you'll see them, especially on colder evenings, just sitting outside the co-op or in the bus shelter. In the summer months, it's not too bad. They can, you know, come down to the river or the mill and in the wreck. But they need somewhere they can just literally hang out and perhaps take part in a few activities or not, or just chill, whatever they feel they want to do.
Give them something to do, a place to go. And I'm guessing that one of the things that makes the hub such a success is that some of your volunteers know from personal experience what it's like to be at the end of your tether and have everything in life go wrong.
Yeah. Do you know, over 70% of our volunteer hours are given by people who have needed us or still need us. The lived experience within the hub is absolutely, it's there, it's full on. People just know. There's no judgment. There's no, you know, everybody is welcome. Come on in and, you know, you will have a warm welcome no matter who you are, because our people, they've all been there. They know what it's like to need a little bit of help, a bit of support, or even just somebody to talk to while away an hour or so having mindless chatter. We can do that as well.
And then knowing what it feels like when they get that help.
Yes. We seem to be the first port of call for, you can't believe, well, just everything really. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, we had somebody that had lost their job because they weren't supposedly able to work in this country. And we dealt with that. We dealt with embassies, immigration, and they were able to work. But that was just, it was just one thing that happened in a day that, oh, well, now we've done that. We can do immigration as well.
Turn your hands to everything then.
Well, we try. If we don't know how to deal with something, we'll find out and we'll follow it through. We never leave somebody on their own. You know, it's.
It would be amazing, Carol, wouldn't it, if there were places like the Vale Hub elsewhere? What a difference it could make.
Do you know, it's a place of joy. It's a place of absolute joy. I go in and I just go in there, and when I see the children playing and the parents talking, and older people sitting, perhaps having a game of cards or something together. My heart just sings. It's exactly what we wanted it to be. It's welcoming, it's open. You haven't got to go through lots of corridors to find the right door to enter. It's just open and welcoming. So please come on in, buy something in our little cafe, help us do what we do, and any help we can get to help our future sustainability is always very, very welcome.
Dorset Councillor for Sturminster Newton, Carol Jones, telling me about the amazing Vale Family Hub in Stur. And with that, it's time for me, Jenny Devitt, to bid you farewell and to say, see you next month. Enjoy the summer and the break from those heat waves.